listening to Smashing the Party. This is your host, Nate Baumberger.
I don't have any sound. Do I have sound? I don't have any sound. Shit. All right, hold on. Do I have sound? Can you guys hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. We're going to try. Someone text me if you can't hear me. One of my people's text me. Because I got sound on my computer. And I'm going to see if my sound's working here. All right. Somebody text me. Somebody's listening. Welcome to Smashing the Party. I don't think I had my intro, but whatever. They're talking right now about the debate. It's been a while since I've been on. I've been taking a little break, a mental health break, but I'm back and I wanted to talk about the debate. People like when I stream this debate and I talk while the debate's going. For some reason, I get a lot of requests like, hey, Nate, are you going to stream the debate? So I'm streaming the debate. So if somebody can't hear me, let me know, because then I will stop looking the fool. Of course, my phone died, of course, right now. That's fucking awesome. Give me a second. So if you... The only thing you're missing right now is MSNBC. I'm going to throw NBC News on. Send me a text. Tell me that you hear sound. Because, I mean, I literally had all kinds of craziness happening right before I got on. But anyway, this is Smashing the Party. My name's Nate Baumberger. You know the deal. I yell and scream at the clouds. And tonight we're going to watch the VP debate. Maybe there's going to be insects landing on heads. Who knows? Some one-liners. Who knows? But tonight I'm just going to follow the request and come back into the Smashing the Party and live stream this debate. It's fucking totally boring. I have no interest in the debate. I've already got my ballot. I've filled it out. That's a lie. I haven't filled it out, but I know what I'm going to do. So there's nothing that can happen from here until November that's going to change my vote. It doesn't fucking matter if Kamala Harris is found out to be a Manchurian candidate. I could give a fuck. I've seen what Donald Trump represents, and therefore it's an easy choice for me. As you've watched me before, I've said I will vote for placenta after birth over Donald Trump. Anyone but Trump. Now, what's interesting about tonight's debate is that J.D. Vance used to be a never Trumper. He was quoted as saying Trump was a danger to democracy and he's a threat, he's a narcissist. He said all these things, and all of a sudden when he's requested to join the party, he has fallen in line. As I like to say, he fell on his knees and started to fillet Donald Trump. I don't care if you're offended. That's what I'm here for. But the truth is, it's so embarrassing that we have to go through this bullshit. And I have family, friends. I shouldn't say that. I have people in my sphere that think it's a good idea to vote for this fucking clown. And tonight, we're going to watch the VP debate. What's interesting is that this guy has done a metamorphosis, almost like he crawled into a cocoon and came out, not a butterfly, but a piece of shit, because he used to be along the lines of a never Trumper. And now he's, again, prostrated himself and changed his tune. As I've said many times on the show, I've done all the drugs. I don't know, I have no preference. I do have a preference. As I said before, if cocaine were legal, I would totally be on a prescription. But I know that power is somehow more addicting, more alluring than any drug, because this guy has done the full change inside the cocoon in front of America, and he still fillets. So let's see if we can get sound here. And we're going to go to my YouTube presenter studio mode. Let's see if we're going to have technical problems, folks. This may not work. Well, we'll see. Doesn't sound like I have any sound, but no one's texted me yet and said, hey, no sound.
an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules.
All right, I think we're good. Can you guys hear me? Let me know, please.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the
I don't know if you can hear this or not.
We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns.
You got to tell me if you can hear the debate.
Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing.
I'm hoping you can hear this, folks.
The Middle East. Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action.
I don't think you guys hear sound.
Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over...
No, it didn't start October 7th. Just for the viewers, this is the line that Democrats and Republicans are taking. It started. I'm just going to talk over him because there's nothing he's going to say that's going to make sense. This started when Israel decided to fucking take over and disregard the Palestinian humanity. So hopefully you have sound, because this is the line that totally irritates me from both parties. They're both full of shit talking about it started on October 7th. It started way before that. It started when we decided to plot out land for the Israel, who the Jewish people suffered during the Holocaust, and we gave them a country. And what they did was they decided to put the people there living there into apartheid. So sorry, Tim. Sorry, Kamala. Sorry, J.D. Vance. Who's going to go harder at and saying that we're friends of Israel? This is what's going to happen right now. But it's total bullshit. Look, you're not going to fucking gaslight me with genocide. You're just not going to do it. So let's see if we can hear this. I hope you can hear it. Damn it.
Nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able
See, he's got to avoid the answer. He's got to avoid it.
Together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces.
He's nervous.
And there will be consequences.
Oops.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question.
Vance is smooth, by the way.
Support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to
Dude, this is inconsequential. It's not consequential. Stop. Calm down. Calm down.
Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was a working class family. My mother required food assistance.
Are you fucking serious? He's going to do his fucking stump speech?
And she raised me in part because my mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here.
See, this is why, if you read my blog post about this debate, it's fucking theatrics. This is just a moment for these guys to introduce themselves. One of them is not going to be remembered. Whoever loses is not going to be remembered. Remember in my blog post, I talk about Lloyd Benson. Who the fuck is Lloyd Benson? Well, you don't know because he didn't win. So one of these guys is going to be inconsequential.
The American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States...
No one texted me, so I don't know if anyone's watching, but I hope you hear.
The United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take.
The bad guys.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear.
Who has the bigger fucking dick for fucking Israel? That's what's going on right now. Sorry, folks. Look, if you're Jewish, I am not anti-Semitic, because if I was, that means I would hate Arabs, Jews, and everyone else. I'm not. So, again, the definition of anti-Semitic is fucked. But no, I'm anti-fucking genocide. And right now, both parties are fucking claiming to be, oh, I'm the bigger supporter of genocide. So this is all nonsense bullshit. And I don't give a fuck if this ruins my job chances in any career I might have. But certainly I'm not going to stand here and be gaslit by both parties and say, oh, yeah. You know, there's folks that go, and I'm talking over them because it's total nonsense. There's folks that go to Israel and they say it's so clear that it's Jim Crow on steroids. It's bullshit.
Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blamed Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years, and the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about...
Oh, for Christ's sake.
...that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October...
Netanyahu's a war criminal, by the way. So all you folks that are supporting Israel, the state of Israel, there's nothing wrong with the Jewish people in Israel. It's the state of Israel. Just like I don't agree with everything our government does, it doesn't mean it reflects on me. It means that the people in power are fucking morons. They don't give a fuck about humanity. That's what's going on. So genocide is not something I'm going to fucking advocate for either party. When the Democrats stand by Israel, when they're killing people, and what is it, 14,000 fucking children been killed since they started this bullshit, it's ridiculous. Nope, not going to do it. Let's move on.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest.
So lame. This is so fucking lame.
People are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. According to CBS News polling, 7 in 10
I don't know why my sound's not working.
60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph.
Looks like I do have sound.
Of 2
Holy
grandparents
shit.
on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last
Looks
photograph
like I have
ever taken
sound.
of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible.
People are like, oh, I like
to help the
J.D.
people in
Vance.
those
Look at his
communities,
blue
particularly
eyes.
communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They
Dude.
need their government to do their job, and I
Every
commit
time he
that
acts like
when
he's from
Donald Trump is president
Appalachia,
again, the government
I
will
cringe.
put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the
So this is a
climate change.
deflection. This is a complex deflection away from the answer. The fact is that these fuckers don't believe in climate change. They say it. They call it spring. They call it autumn. They call seasonal change climate change. So again, nonsense coming from J.D. Vance. Still not impressed with Tim Walz, but again, this is inconsequential. Read my blog. I mean, this is fucking total theatrics. And he is killing it right now. J.D. Vance is doing a better presentation than Tim Walz. Tim Walz looks scared and nervous. J.D. Vance is looking at the camera, saying bullshit, but it's okay because this is what they do. They sell bullshit.
Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to solve the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real.
He looks nervous as fuck, doesn't he?
Absolutely critical. But this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across.
These guys are just clowning. Sorry, I mean, look, I'm Kamala all the way. As I said, placenta would win my vote. But this is a clown show. Read my blog post, okay? I wrote a real quickie, dropped it like it's hot.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this.
These non sequiturs, what that means for you folks out there is it means like the things don't link up. It doesn't follow a sequence. They jump. It's called pivoting. It's called deflecting. It's called politicking. Both of them are doing this dance, and it's fucking so annoying. Just say the fucking shit. Just answer the fucking question. Sorry, guys. You wanted this. You wanted me to live stream it. Still no messages from anybody saying they can't hear sound. Either I have nobody watching or I have sound. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen from somebody?
The environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Senator. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists
She just wants to say your time is up.
Is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.
Mexico God,
border
here we go. Here's where Vance
going
going to lay it in. Lay it on me, Vance.
American voters.
Lay it on me,
Senator
buddy.
Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo.
Here come the brown people.
Policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl.
This is such a clown show, folks. I am literally doing this because I got five requests that explicitly wanted me to live stream this. Okay? Painful. Boring.
So you've got to stop the bleeding.
Bullshit.
You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border
2 minutes.
policies.
Your 2 minutes are going to be up, sir.
Re-implement
Nora O'Donnell wants to
deportations,
say your
and that
time's
gets
up.
me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So
Or
we've got
Margaret.
20, 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportation.
1 million people, 1 million criminals.
Harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers.
Listen,
A lot of
folks,
people will go home if
he
they
wanted
can't
to
work for less than
fucking
minimum wage
export
in
them
our
all,
country.
whether they're legal or
A lot
not.
of
This is what he
workers
said.
are
He's
workers
changing
who
his
just wanna
tune.
earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used
trafficked.
as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in
God.
this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris.
Fuck. What about Elon Musk taking over our fucking goddamn propaganda platforms and owning them and then running satellite fucking interference on Ukraine? Jesus Christ. How about that fucking immigrant?
I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
So no
Governor,
description.
Do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald
Very
Trump
true.
talk about if we actually did
Very
something?
true.
And they
For you
need to
Republicans
run
out there, you
by the
fucking
legislature. You
Trumpers,
can't just do this
he
through the
fucking
executive
killed the
branch.
border bill for
So
politics.
we
This is
have
why
the
it's
options to do
theatrics
this.
bullshit.
Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace. And it has
Dude,
to
these
stop.
guys just
Look, I think what
fucking
Tim said
love
just doesn't
putting the
pass
fucking
the
onus
smell
on these
test.
brown
For
people
3
coming in.
years,
I don't know
Kamala
what the
Harris
fuck is
went
up with you. I don't know how this
that she
sells.
was gonna undo Donald
It's
Trump's
offensive
border
to me
policies.
as a
She did
brown
exactly
person. It's
that.
so
We had a
offensive.
record number
It's
of
so
illegal crossings. We had a
fucking
record
offensive.
number of
I have
fentanyl coming into our
people
country.
in my
And
sphere
now that she's running for
that have
president, or a few months
commented
before,
about
she
people
says
working on their
it's
house
she got
not
originally
speaking
cared
English. And I'm
about
like,
a piece of
fuck you.
legislation. The
Fuck
only
off.
thing
I don't
that
know
she
what it
did
is with you
when she
people and
became
brown
the
people,
vice
but
president,
Jesus
she became
fucking
the
Christ.
appointed border czar,
Call
was to
him.
undo
Call up
the
Jesus and ask him what he'd do
Donald Trump
about
executive
immigration.
actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents
Massive.
who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will.
It's
when Donald Trump is
all
president.
because of the
Your
immigrants.
time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fixed
Fuck
this
you.
issue.
All I got to say is fuck you, America. I love America, but fuck you, mass deportations. What the fuck? This ain't your fucking land. You stole it anyway. European fucking Americans, motherfuckers. Jesus Christ.
That vilified a large number of people who were here legally.
Vilified.
In the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Lankford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let
He's got
Donald
that
Trump
creepy
continue
look
to
at the
make
camera,
it
doesn't he?
And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Good job.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker,
These
you
debaters.
know that Congress controls the purse strings
God,
and
you
its
guys have
funding.
no idea how painful
So
this
you
is.
have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents,
his
they
people are
just
jerking
don't
off to that one.
have
The borders are.
job.
He
Of
said
course,
the borders
additional
are.
resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president.
What a clown.
empowering our law enforcement
What a
to say,
metamorphosis
if
this
you try
guy
to
has
come across
done.
the border illegally,
No,
you've got
never
stay in
Trumper
Mexico,
to
you've got go
fucking
back through proper
sycophant.
channels. Now, Governor Walz Waltz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed.
It's the immigrants' fault.
Housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans.
Oh my God. This shit sells. 50% of you fucks will buy this shit.
Who have had their lives
The immigrants are the problem. What a fucking bunch of clowns. 50% of America thinks that's true. That poll is either shitty, true, or fucking, you guys are disgusting. And I say you guys because I know none of you are watching. You guys that are watching are great.
Enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me.
Hey, you know what? Fuck it. Bring out the faith, because it's fucking true. Half the evangelicals are following this clown Trump, so why not speak their language?
It lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. I like it. I like that. I like that dignity shit. I don't like the way they talk about Israel and Palestine. They basically make Palestinians look like the bad guy. Fuck all that.
We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys were going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret.
He's such a fuck.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the books.
Come on, ladies.
Something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice
Theatrics, folks. This is all theatrics.
Billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they
That's a
need.
good line. He did
Senator,
good.
I want to give you a moment to
That's
respond
good.
on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies.
This is the red meat that his base wants. Look, how are you going to hire someone when they failed for the job already? She doesn't have the job.
Housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans,
Why the fuck are they hating on immigrants so bad? What the fuck? I'm telling you, this is white supremacy enshrined in our fucking political process. I don't give a fuck who you are. You're my parent, you're my brother. Fuck you if you believe this shit.
Her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense, and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans.
Fucking A. Bullshit.
And you saw an American
You guys can't buy this shit. You're buying the immigration shit, so I'm sure you're buying this. I mean,
that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
that's a good argument.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries.
So
to
ignore the
Mexico and
experts.
elsewhere,
He's riding that pony. That was a good point. And look, I'm totally biased.
We made America less self-reliant, less.
I'm totally biased, but that was a good point that Tim Walz pulled out. That was a weak retort from J.D. Vance. Oh my God, when you say wisdom in Donald Trump, Jesus Christ, interrupt him.
We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator,
there you go.
Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home.
He's so nervous, but he's making good points. And look at when JD Vance does that eye thing, like he looks at the camera. It's kind of fucking.
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just
A racist America, motherfuckers, you fucks.
Conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I
These
want to talk about
people
personal
suck, by the way.
qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
That's fair.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was,
What
can
is
you
going on with her
explain
makeup?
The discrepancy.
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance.
That was a weird
in
pause.
2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's
Look,
Hitler.
he's practiced this
I know
response.
you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that works for normal Americans, a secure
I
border,
misspoke.
a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you
Power's a hell of a drug, folks.
Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States
Congress'
senator,
fault.
that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the
Oh, the tariffs. That's the favorite word from these motherfuckers. Tariffs. Give them tariffs. Give them tariffs, Bo.
Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country...
Dude, how do you guys buy this that Republican Party is the party for the middle class when they consistently are funded by the rich people? Elon Musk is not fucking middle class. He's a diamond fucking apartheid baby. Emerald boy. Fuck stick.
You signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care.
It's fucking healthcare, you fucking pro-life fucks. It's fucking healthcare. You can have your protest and stand outside Planned Parenthood, but it's fucking healthcare. Go to the hospital and protest heart operations or whatever, but that's what you're doing, by the way. So it's so clear, and any medical professional will tell you it's healthcare, and it's so weird that you guys are like, and you want to get involved. Until it happens to you, don't understand.
So in Minnesota, what we did was restore.
So stupid.
Roe versus Wade.
You're an idiot for believing that
women
abortion
in
should
charge
be an
of their
issue
healthcare.
passed to the
But
states.
look,
It's
this is
fucking
the thing. If
healthcare.
you don't know
You're a
Marissa
moron.
Or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception.
Handmaid's
to
Tale.
limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about
True.
healthcare. In Minnesota,
13% infant mortality rate
We
increase.
trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy
He's
front
so
just to
slimy,
give women
so
more options.
fucking
Now,
slimy.
of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way
Imagine traveling through the states and you're like, oh, wow, I guess I can't get an abortion. I did it with marijuana, by the way, when I was traveling the states. I'm like, all right, I was checking to see whether the state was legal because I had a vaporizer on me. Imagine doing that for your health care. It was easy for me. I could say, oh, I'm in Oklahoma. They're fucking assholes here. Okay, fine. I can't pull this out. I'll keep it in my bag.
Answer the question about restrictions.
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. abortion. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy.
Yo, women, this is such a fucking crock of shit. This is gaslighting. This is domestic abuse. He's slapping you around right now with his rhetoric. Let me just tell you, they're not committed to pursuing autonomy for you. They want to have a control over you. Think Handmaid's Tale. That was written because it's happened. It's happened in places. The author actually talks about the fact that she wrote nothing in that book that hasn't happened, that a human being hasn't done to other human beings.
We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be...
Come on, women. How the hell are you going to vote for Republicans knowing that they're going to fucking impose restrictions on your autonomy? Get it together.
We understand that too.
Get it to fucking together.
Need to be available.
Clowning. You're clowning me. Don't even come to me in an argument next time I see you at a family gathering. For Christ's sake. No. No. I'm not a woman, but that's why it's fucking doctors. No restrictions. It's a healthcare issue. Fuck. Triggered. I'm triggered right now.
To make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice...
No, he's not. It's palliative care, folks. It's palliative care. Medical professionals, palliative care if you work in a NICU, you understand what palliative care is. That's what they're doing. They're talking about babies that are going to die, and they're using that as a campaign issue. Stop fucking playing. I know there's nuance there, but they're mumbling right now, and they're not being clear. Palliative care is an awful, awful thing when you have to deal with it, and that's what he's using as a political point.
Always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Thank you.
There's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry, folks. I'm hoping you can hear this. I'm hoping you can hear me. I don't know what's up with my sound. I'm not even getting my little banging sound. But what pisses me off the most about watching this debate is politics is nuance. And when you have these folks running, they take the issues that are going to be sound bites. They're going to take the issues that are going to be offensive. 9 months and they're leaving babies die. That is a specific case of palliative care, which is basically when you have a birth of a baby and they're not going to survive. I have friends that have had this happen. It's traumatizing. It changes their fucking life. And I'm not going to sit here and stand up and say, oh, wow, this is how the law should be. I'm saying, wow, it's a healthcare issue. I don't know shit about fucking shit. But somehow, and I have family members and people in my, stop, family, not family, people in my sphere that live their life as if they're living some divine purpose, talking about how they know best on medical care for women. It's disgusting to me. It's embarrassing for anybody to take that position. It's almost like somebody coming to me and saying, oh, listen, I've never written a piece of software, but I'm going to tell you how to write software. Fuck off, bro. You're not even going to tell me how to run the fucking computer, let alone if you haven't read a piece of software. I mean, it's embarrassing. Now imagine a law that says, hey, whatever your job is, your expertise is, the government comes in and says, nope, that's not the way you do it. That's what's happening with these kind of laws. And so whether you're pro-life or not, you have to understand that there's a fine line between what the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically like you have a little piece of information, you all of a sudden think you're an expert. It happens all the time on Facebook. Oh, wow, I Googled something. Wow, now I know about fucking Iran policy, and I know about Israel, and I know about apartheid, I know about Jim Crow. You did a fucking research. I mean, I have a team of researchers that put this information together for me, so I have credibility when I talk about things because I don't put shit out there that's bullshit. I fact check the shit out of it, and I will bring the hammer down on my team if they ever put something false. But the truth about abortion is that one party has decided that they are pro-life, and they've decided that life begins at this conception. And so everything after that, this human being is not paying taxes. They're essentially leeches on our system. If we're going to classify them as human beings, why aren't they fucking working? Should they be taxed? Should you get a tax credit for every nut that you bust? Because what happens if that nut hits the egg? Then it immediately becomes a person? Or do we decide that every man is carrying around thousands and thousands of human beings? Perhaps I should get a tax deduction for all the potential human beings. Let's just go potential human beings that I'm carrying. Of course, men would get more because women only have a certain amount of eggs. I mean, this is the weird ass shit you got to get into when you start talking about this stuff. And Republicans don't want to talk about it like that. They think, oh, I'm being facetious and I'm exaggerating. But the truth is so simple. Keep it between your doctor and and the women. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's disgusting for men to step out and have such a strong anti-abortion policy. It's so weird. It's like, oh, I'm anti any prostrate fucking healthcare. This is my position because I believe that the prostrate helps you shoot your nut, and so therefore I'm anti-prostrate. I mean, this is the weird ass shit. It's the same weird ass shit. They just crafted a better language around it, and it's disgusting.
Holding responsible could curb mass shootings. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this.
Thoughts and prayers.
Stuff, and we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And
he's lying when he blinks like that. He's got to tell. When he kind of goes like this, he's fabricating.
Massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So
oh my God, the Mexicans!
Guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger.
Prisons. They want to make your schools like prisons. Every other country's laughing at us right now. Just, it's so silly. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying Tim Walz and Kamala Harris have the answers. I hate their fucking policy on Israel. I hate it. I think it's trash. I think it's fucking inhumane. The Palestinians deserve dignity, but this is horseshit.
Tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is
Christ have mercy.
I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay. First of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic,
he's making your heart soft, isn't he?
As many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think
you always got to sneak in the fucking brown people and the police officers.
You previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is, talking about cities and where it's at, the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora.
Look at them. They're getting all warm and fuzzy. That's good. It's good. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a little bit of warm and fuzzy politics. They got to agree, right?
More than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes.
Ooh, venture capitalists, private equity.
The Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit.
That's pretty good.
Also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes? And won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices?
Handing out.
No, it's not
handouts.
We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up. It can be shifted. It can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks.
This is way better than as far as policy goes, this is way better than the fucking the main debate.
Certainly for me,
I'm not saying Tim Walz is killing it, but I'm just saying they're at least getting the nuance. Politics is nuance.
You don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth.
JD Vance wants to come over and hug Tim Walz right now. He's looking at him. He's like, but he's still not sure, so he's gonna fight him a little bit. Watch him. Look at him.
Put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million.
Ooh, Tim. He called him Tim.
For scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have.
No, it's not. It's private equity, BlackRock buying up houses, and landlords fucking running up rents. Stop it. I know all you realtors out there. I know what you do. I know why you're skiing in the fucking winter. Stop playing me. Stop.
Now, Tim
Stop.
just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up
the lumber, you're not speaking to me, man.
Immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for a national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans.
Look, I know I'm going to get a lot of haters on the left, but after traveling the United States, there's a lot of fucking land that's fucking not being used, and I'm going to say it, but it's shit land. It's not land I want to live in. Sorry. I love it. I love America, but.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs.
Immigrants. It's the brown people
are part of this problem.
This so speaks to America too. Like, I know some of you guys are like loving this shit. Even people in my sphere love this shit. I remember hearing that people working in their house were not speaking English. I'll never fucking forget it. Totally changed my opinion of people in my sphere, because I'm like, what the fuck is that? What is that? That's literally white supremacy ingrained in your mentality. And this guy's speaking your language. I understand why you vote this way. I do. Because deep down inside, you think you're better than these people. Somehow, some way, despite the fact that you came from a diverse motherfucking family, the migrants are the problem. This is happening all across the nation. I hear this shit. It's so disgusting to me. I don't care. And by the way, I'm not picking on anyone in my family. I'm talking about a hypothetical sphere. And everyone in my family is beautiful and lovely. I'm saying, when you have people in your sphere talking this way, it's super offensive. It's super degrading. It's like, what the fuck is you? You have a totally different experience than me, don't you? I guess you do.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last
Nora's looking sparkly, isn't she? Sorry, not being sexist. She just looks sparkly.
In response, he said, I have concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain
this is the worst.
And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have
under the Affordable Care Act.
It's very simple common sense. I think it's Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress. You're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything, because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows.
He's avoiding the issue. Folks, this is one of the things that I harp on is the math. The math doesn't work. The way you reduce costs is put everyone in the same fucking pool. It's so simple. It's not even debatable. I mean, I actually find it offensive that I know people that teach math, that are math experts, that even come up with anything but actuary science when it comes to this. It's fucking putting everyone in the same pool. I'm talking over him because this guy's lying when he talks about, he's actually said he wants to put people that have pre-existing conditions in their own pool. It makes no sense.
You don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done.
There we go.
But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we could do.
He's done
but
nothing.
I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance.
It's fucking true. Actuary science.
Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place.
We like the ACA. We're not going to repeal it.
Insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is— So you think the
individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know
true.
that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize—
Thank you for bringing the math in. Dude, it drives me nuts.
People who might not be able to afford it get there. And we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in America. American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families.
They love saying it.
There is a child care crisis
There's-
in this country, and
Oh,
the
God.
United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program.
I'm not
for
liking this
parents.
debate. I'm sorry,
Their
guys.
walls.
I'm
You
so
said
fucking
that
bored.
Democrats win both the White House and Congress.
But it's more
This is a
nuanced.
day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you
This is
become
easy. This is an easy one. Come on.
business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or
I froze.
to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so,
Mara,
how long should employers be
your time
mandated
is up.
to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues
Margaret,
and
sorry.
Democrats, too, have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also
You're not
a
gay
very
anymore.
brilliant
You know you
litigator,
thought you were
and
for a
I'm
little
so
bit.
proud of her. But being a working
Hillbilly
mom, even for
effigy
somebody with all
or
the
eulogy
advantages
or
of my
whatever the
wife,
fuck his book is.
Extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care. And
all right, so let me just tell you what's up. This is the charter fucking school bullshit where they want to start funneling money to religious organizations. No, absolutely not. I'm not okay with fucking giving churches money to take care of children. They're not paying taxes. The church can fucking survive on the fucking tithes from their people. No benefits to churches. It's religion, zero benefit. I'm sorry if you disagree. Fuck all that. Fuck all that. Fuck all that.
Families, we're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing.
Come on, guys. You got to end this
So
shit.
I want to get your thoughts.
How
on
the fuck
this.
are you going to go for an hour and a
President
half?
Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ
Penalizing.
and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of
Then we're going to pay for
workers.
childcare.
It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries.
How do you guys buy the argument that cutting taxes across the board for everybody isn't going to create a deficit? You're conservative, but yet you want to cut taxes and you don't want to have a deficit. You fucking are bad business runners because it doesn't make sense. You have to have revenue. So you take the revenue from the rich people who have it and give it to the poor. That's exactly, you want to call it socialism, that's how it works. Clowning. It doesn't even make sense.
Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to,
guys, I know this isn't my best night, but God, this is frustrating.
Induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that
Guess no kids, you're fucked, huh?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President
Here we go.
Trump and other Republican
Lloyd, if you're watching the steal, they're talking about the steal, bro. Republican Pennsylvania senators and fucking congresspeople, the steal you guys tried to fucking pull off. Fuckers.
Certified the 2020 election results.
Yeah, I know it was you, Smucker. I know you did this shit. I know. You're on the record. You're hiding right now.
Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit.
And here we go with the
alternative
fraud.
electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable.
Ooh,
and that's
sidestep.
But I want to answer your
He's
question
doing the
because you did
shuffle.
ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow
How
Americans,
is this
she
an
wants to
answer
censor
to, are you
people
going to
who need
certify the
misinformation.
election?
I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind.
He's just talking to these people are fucking not Democrats. Bobby Kennedy's a, listen.
Try to persuade our fellow Americans.
Stop.
Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of
So it's
issues.
censorship.
That, to me, is a
Facebook's a
much bigger threat to democracy
bastion of
than
shit.
what
Twitter's
Donald
owned
Trump
by a
said
right-wing
when he said
fucking
protesters
ex-Nazi
should
wannabe.
peacefully protest on January the
You
6th.
kidding me?
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if
What's
we
he
want to say
talking
that
about?
we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind?
He can't say it.
2020 COVID situation.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy, the most sacred right under the United States democracy.
Did he win or not?
First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds.
He can't answer the question, folks.
Will long outlive this present political moment. I would
ask it again.
Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue.
Ask him the question again.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear a mask.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator,
He didn't answer the question.
For 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about
is true.
Where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up.
That was good. That was fucking solid.
We'll be right back with both
Oh, please. I need to fucking, please. Okay, listen. 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 This is way too long, but it's good. And it's good if you're interested in this policy bullshit and if you're into the back and forth. But it's not as good as what I would have liked to see, because I would have loved for him to answer that question. He avoids questions. This is called filibustering in real time. What these politicians do, they're very good at it, unfortunately, is they're able to take a question and deflect and use all that time to talk about something else, maybe put a couple jabs, maybe Donald Trump calls it the weave, throw a couple jabs in there, but they never get the result. A direct question, did Donald Trump lose or win the election? He knows. J.D. Vance knows that if he says Donald Trump lost the election, like if he made that statement, he would have the ire of the wacko MAGA party. And I say wacko MAGA party because a lot of my Republican friends aren't wacko MAGA people. I would argue that a lot of my friends do believe in the Reagan-esque, not saying I do, I think it's great, but a different form of republicanism. But the people that are activists, the people that are willing to get up off their ass and do the crazy shit to make sure Donald Trump gets elected, they are furious every time anyone indicates that he lost the election. Nick Fuentes, a known right-wing figure, went apeshit as soon as Donald Trump said in one interview, I lost the election, it wasn't a bid, and he kind of backtracked on that. And basically, Nick Fuentes and his millions of followers lost their fucking mind because they need to be living in this reality where it was stolen. They need to have that energy and that fire to believe that they were wrongful. They were victims in this situation. This is the victimhood of rolls right along with the evangelicals that do the same shit about the war on Christmas. Every year Christmas, you know, when I get my battle suit ready to battle Christmas, for some reason they're like, oh, the war on Christmas begins, and I'm like, yeah, motherfucker. And I'm joking right now. There's no war on Christmas for me, but this idea that you're the victim is it's such a comfortable feeling doing this. And so if JD Vance would have answered that question honestly, he would lose probably a third of his followers. And when I say that there's rational people in there that don't give a fuck about Donald Trump lying, this is what I don't understand. There's people out there like, yeah, I'm voting for Donald Trump. I don't care that he lies. I don't care that he says nothing. I just don't like the other people. I don't understand where you're coming from. Why do you think you should be able to participate in this campaign, in this democracy, when you say you don't care about the candidate and what they say? It's completely mind-boggling. I'm not saying we take away your vote, but I'm saying you're not qualified by just having that ideology. The ideology that says, hey, you know what? My candidate can say whatever the fuck he wants, and I believe him. When Barack Obama said dumb shit, just like Tim Walz said some dumb shit about Israel and supporting Israel no matter what they do to the Palestinians, fuck all that. I will absolutely stand against that because it's not what I believe is true. You fucker. Change my camera when I'm on a roll. So for me, it's a matter of principle, and you can be against your candidate on certain issues and you can be for them. I'm against the Kamala Harris, Biden, Israel position. I'm against a lot of people in the world's position, actually most of the world's with my position, which is that Israel's running an apartheid state and it's fucking bullshit. And it's crazy to think that they're not. And you go there and it's absolutely an apartheid state, and these people have different roads. They're not allowed to go there. You have to profess your religion to go down certain paths. True story. And they're okay with it. I don't know what planet that's okay. But certainly if it were happening in America, we'd call it Jim Crow, and we fought against that stuff. So if you're one of those folks that, oh, I'm Jewish, you don't understand, you're anti-Semitic. No, anti-Semitic would mean I hate everybody in the Middle East because that's a Semitic era. You don't even know what anti-Semitic is. You've captured a word because it's an easy thing to throw out. I'm not anti-Jewish people. I'm not anti-Arabs. I'm not anti-anybody. I'm anti-power struggle. When someone doesn't have the power and they don't have the autonomy to live their life, that's what I'm against. And don't fuck with me on this shit because the news, whether it's being censored or not, we're watching live genocide happen. So this position, I differ with Democrats. So I'm able to say that. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go down the fucking cliff on every single issue with Democrats. It's part of what makes it nuanced and say, hey, look, this candidate's the best we got. Okay. And then you fight for those policies and try to fight to get their position to be changed. That's what I believe. In this case, you have a candidate, a vice presidential candidate that will not go against this weird fantasy that Donald Trump won. And it's a malignant narcissist fantasy that he's living in his own world, that he won the election. And you just saw his candidate stand up and just kind of deflect about the answer. It's a non-starter for me. It basically tells me that people that vote for him, they live their life like this. They're okay to be bullshitted. They're okay to oppress people. They're okay to do whatever the fuck they want. There's no principles there. And these same people then profess Christ's love and all this bullshit. It's literally weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life that evangelicals have sided with Trump. It's literally killing any sales argument you have for following in your Sky Daddy. Again, if I was a Thor follower, I certainly wouldn't be living my life saying, hey, this is the way Thor wants me to live, and then thwart everything he says. And when somebody comes out against my Thor love, I'm not certainly going to bend over and say, oh, that doesn't matter. It only matters when it comes to certain situations. It's totally bizarre to me. I'm telling you, it triggers me.
Is built from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that
you taking my stump speech?
Better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself.
Pretty
now,
good.
Look, we
That's
all
pretty
know
good.
who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
You got it. You
Governor
got
Walz,
it.
thank
you. Got it.
Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants
God,
to be
your
next
white
vice
privilege.
president,
I'm so
that we
sorry.
are a
Just
rich
don't
and
sympathize.
prosperous enough country where
I know.
every American,
I know you
whether they're
fucking
rich
white
or
people that
poor,
watch
ought
me
to
and
be
love
able to
me
turn
and
on
hate
their
me.
heat in the middle
It's
of a
just
cold winter
so
night.
sickening to
That's
see a
gotten more
white male
difficult
cry
thanks to
about
Kamala
fucking
Harris's energy policies.
the
I
hardships.
believe that whether you're rich or poor,
The
you ought to be able
hardships.
to afford a
The
nice
hardships
meal
for the
your
white
family.
male, the
That's
cis
gotten
white
harder
male in
because of
America.
Kamala Harris's policies.
Such a hard life.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl, and that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed.
What a
She's
fucking
been
shitty ass
the vice president
fucking
for
close.
3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people.
If they're following you and they're saying that same thing.
They're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you.
Fuck you.
And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
Good God. All right. Look. I can't do anymore. I gotta call it quits. But hopefully my sound worked. For those of you that really love watching me commentate and comment and throw fire when I'm watching this shit, hopefully you're entertained. I didn't have a lot to go on. I kind of stood by watching a little bit, but my take in this is it's all theatrics, and this is why I made this part of my live stream tonight. It's all total bullshit. Most of you have made your mind. No one's going to watch the vice presidential debate and decide, oh, wow, I think Tim Walz made a good argument for Kamala Harris. So it's all total shit. It's all ratings pull, and I don't know how the ratings went. I think the reason why I would have tuned in if I didn't have a live stream show called Smashing the Party is I would tune in to watch JD Vance waffle and maybe see what kind of metal Tim Walz has. And it sounds to me like in the beginning, I saw his facial expressions. He kind of looked nervous and he was a little bit kind of off kilter. Definitely aesthetically, JD Vance is polished. He's smooth. He's a good talker. I have nothing against his approach. I do have a problem the way he doesn't answer questions. And I think he tries to use that flex of saying, hey, Nora this, and he pulls the person in as if he's talking to Nora when he should be saying, hey, look, listen, American people, Tim did that a couple times, which I liked. A little, Tim was probably a little bit more shaky as far as aesthetics, but I think the most resounding point was watching JD Vance not answer the question of whether he would or not certify the results of the election. And the fact that he danced around that and had a non-answer is scary. You either say yes or no. When he was asked, did Donald Trump win the election, he deflected because he knows what that would do to his base. So those, for me, were probably the most poignant moments. I am definitely progressive and liberal-minded, if you want to use that term. I hate it. But I certainly believe that there is nothing in the world. This light that I'm looking at, that nail, the bug that's crawling on the wall, all are way better than Donald Trump. And I've said this before, not to be gruesome. Placenta, literally after birth, would do a better job than Donald Trump. And I could make a whole case for it. Maybe that'll be my next blog post. So for me, this was just theatrics. Hope you were entertained. I'm fucking exhausted. That was exhausting watching this. And of course, Nate, your time is up. Nora, I see you saying your time is up. And that was the other line from the night that maybe will resound is they were really quick to jump on your time is up. And they did have a mic meter, which I thought was pretty cool. But no action here. There's nothing. There's a couple sound bites. There's going to be some replaying. There's going to be people reposting and regenerating content from this as if it's a big deal. Of course, we're still waiting on the October surprise, which is planned by the Republican. James O'Keefe has talked about this. He's the guy from Veritas that cranks out total bullshit stories, but he's been working on an October surprise against the Democrats. So the race will get more exciting for many people, but I'm going to go home tonight and fucking cast my ballot and be done with it and then watch the fireworks. My hope is that we don't have to have the emperor with no clothes testicles in our face for 4 years. Again, if you watch this and you're non-committed and you think this moved the needle, it's total shit. It doesn't move the needle. Go ahead and check out my blog that I wrote today. I whipped it up. It's not the greatest, but it's not AI generated, AI edited, but not AI generated. And it's on my opinion about these VP debates. And what I meant to say in that blog is it's inconsequential. It's all theatrics. Who the fuck is Lloyd Benson? Let me just leave you with that. Who the fuck is Lloyd Benson? Well, he was in a presidential debate, and I had to do a little research to even figure out who the fuck it was. One thing's for sure is that whoever the loser of this debate is, they will kind of fade away. Tim Kaine faded away. Lloyd Benson, who the fuck is that, right? So these folks that don't win these debates will fade away. Not saying that they're not going to have a career. Tim Kaine still has a career, obviously. I believe he's still a senator. But the fact is that they kind of fade away from the presidential politics and kind of go back to whatever hole they crawled out of. Listen, sorry for last night. I'm not going to apologize. I am going to take mental health breaks. A lot of new changes happening in my personal life, which are good, all good. So I've been taking some time off. I did some traveling through the country, and certainly I'm working through another different spot in my life. We can get into it at some point, but it's all good stuff, all good. So I took yesterday off. I plan on being back every day, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, 10:30. My time, though, I do want to move my time. I'm thinking 9 o'clock's the sweet spot. For those of you that are junkies and love to hear me ramble and rant, I'm thinking that might be my sweet spot. I can get something in, get out early. I'm getting older. I don't want to be up until 12 o'clock editing or doing whatever. I don't edit, but you know what I mean? I don't want to be up 12 o'clock opining about my either shitty or poor performance or my good performance. Sometimes I get excited when I do a real good one. Anyway, listen, one of the other things I'm going to leave you with is I do realize that also what I say on this show is inconsequential and may not move the needle for anybody. I do this, if this is your first time watching, I do this for my own entertainment. I do it for my own therapy. And I do obviously want to reach people. Sometimes I've had folks come up to me and say, hey, you know what? I've decided to change my vote. So 4 people in all the time I've been doing this, 160 videos, 4 people decided to change their vote. I don't know if it was me or just maybe my rhetoric, or maybe I had nothing to do with it. But the real purpose of this is entertainment. So everything that I say, you need to fact check. You don't need to take my word for it. I am not God. I'm not a source unless of course, you want to be a super fan, and then you've got to definitely create some fan pages for me if you want to do that. SmashingTheParty.tv, SmashingTheParty.tv, SmashingTheParty.com was hijacked from me. SmashingTheParty.tv is the new domain. I got swag. You know I wear my swag on this show sometimes, but you can go there, buy swag. I am going to support this cause. I spend about $200 a month in just running the blog and all these services that I do. There's all kinds of advertising I can do and all kinds of pushing I can do. Every money that comes into this, it's going towards Smashing the Party LLC. It's a company. It's been going. The company was started several years ago. So this isn't some income that I'm trying to hustle out of you, but it's certainly, I want to make it self-sustaining. So if you feel kind enough to subscribe, certainly do. I know there's some folks that have been subscribed to the blog, and also I got brothers and sisters, family, my sphere that support me as well, and I love you all to death. But certainly this isn't free to run some of this stuff. So I implore you, do one of several things if you want to support me. Subscribe, buy some swag. And then the other thing is definitely follow me on YouTube, because I need to get to 1,000 to do stuff. 1,000. I'm at 64, folks. 64 people. By the way, when I started this, it was at 40. So I've gained 24 people since April, which that to me means a lot. 64 people listen to me every day on YouTube, or at least they subscribe to me and they maybe put me on mute. I need to get to 1,000, long way away, but I love doing it. I'm not going to stop. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed tonight's show. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace. Sorry about my sound too. Hopefully I have sound. I got no messages, so I'm just assuming everything's right. Check me out on YouTube. Peace.